Well, it's been a while since Dave Syvertsen and I have produced a video together on the Our Football Network. And Dave, we get the opportunity to join once together as we do a mock draft right now for April 15th.
Yeah, tax day.
Oh, yeah, I know. I still have to do my taxes later. So, yeah, this is like the last project of the day, and then my taxes are at
Yep.
night. So, anyway, so happy tax day to everybody. Dave Syvertsen here, one of the lead scouts over at Our Lads, the Our Lads Football Network at ourlads.com, of course. And if you are watching this on the Our Lads Football channel, you know who Dave is, or at least you should be, unless you're a new viewer. And if you are, well, make sure to subscribe. Because this is the best time of year to subscribe. These draft guides have just come out, so I got a hold of one just a few days ago. I can't put it down. And if you would prefer a PDF version, that's available too. And you can go to the ourlads.com website. We're going to have a link in the description of the video. I know I'm also going to post this on Prime Sports Network, so I'll have a link in the description of that channel where we're going to have a whole bunch of links, including how you can check out Dave's videos and all sorts of cool stuff. So, Dave, you've been real busy with videos over at Our Lads.
We have been. It's been a really fun, interesting last few months. If you know much about our lads, we know, in my opinion, this is a good thing, but we're very old school. We still print our draft guide and send it out via the mail. And we do have a PDF version available now. But that just goes to show there aren't many of those left in circulation, printable paperback draft guides. And I still think they're going to make a comeback at some point. But it just goes, that's just like kind of like a microcosm of what Our Lads is. It's just old school, traditional scouting with a ton of tape, a ton of collaboration between myself and the rest of the staff. And we come up with our collaborative grades. And it's a fun thing, agreements, disagreements, sharing some information, some of which we put out there, some of which we have to keep to ourselves. And it's just been, it's been a really fun past few months that now we're kind of evolving into the next era of Our Lads with a YouTube channel and a little bit more media, a little bit more plans coming up down the pipe. And it's been a fun few months.
Yes, it has, and it's now at that point where we're getting serious with these mock drafts. Matter of fact, we just did a live mock draft. What was that? A week ago? 2 weeks ago, because we did
2 weeks.
We did a needs video last week, and we are not sure what we're going to do with the NFC. I'm sure we'll do one because we did the AFC. Not sure we're going to do it. I don't think we're doing it live though, so we'll just keep you updated on that. Since we did an AFC one, I'm sure we'll do an NFC one. Maybe it'll be me and you again. Who knows? But we'll get together and do a few more videos for sure before the draft. All right, now I want to check out. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pop this up so you can check out the ourlads.com website. Now, this is how you would, let's just, for instance, you go to the Our Lads site here. You see, real easy, buy draft guide. So, can't get any easier than that. And you open this up, and there you are. This is where you can get the guide, the review guide. We'll be working on that real soon after the draft. So our work is never done. You got the PDF version here. And you can also, of course, put a few things together. And why not? I mean, if you want, you can get the hard copy and the PDF. And then, of course, you go to the depth chart page. And this is where we love to check things out there. And I also want to show everybody, because we're going to use this. These are your rankings. So we're going to use these today. So you've got your quarterback rankings, running back, and all the way down for each position. So as we start going through each position and we start thinking a little bit harder, it'll be a little bit easier in the beginning, but once we start getting middle to late, then we're going to really start taking a look at these rankings and see who's left on the board, so forth and so on. I've got the ticker on the bottom of the screen. Hopefully that'll work out okay, but so far so good. And let's get started. So
Let's do it.
all right, Dave. So who gets the first pick? Who'd you say?
So yeah, I think we could just move on to the second pick. Because,
Yeah, I know, right? I should have just typed that in already. So
first pick is signed, sealed, delivered, Caleb Williams. But I guess, as you're typing that in, we can kind of just, kind of dive into what are we doing here? Are we going after what we think will happen, what we think should happen? And I believe that as we get closer to the actual NFL draft, I mean, we're only 10 days away now. This needs to kind of steer more towards what we think is going to happen, prediction based. And, we get to throw our input in here and there. As you can see, my number one quarterback after the entire grading process was Jaden Daniels. But I think they're going to take Caleb, as does everyone else at this point. It was pretty much a sure thing to me when I saw at USC's Pro Day, I saw someone wearing Bears memorabilia or Bears hat and shirt and jacket, and I said, I don't know who that is. It's not a coach. Doesn't look like a scout. It was Keenan Allen, the wide receiver for the Bears. That basically just said, okay, this guy is going to support his future quarterback. Everything else right now is just for show. This pick has already been made. It's Caleb Williams all day.
Yeah, and good to point that out. And we'll let you know who we would take as well. Like you said, Jaden Daniels. And isn't it interesting, because when we did our first video, which was a couple of months ago, I think, and we were talking about like an early look ahead.
Yep.
It was, we were both surprised that we were both like in sync with Jaden Daniels as the top quarterback, and then sure enough, same thing with the top brass over at our lads. So everybody in mutual agreement that Jaden Daniels should be the top quarterback. I think that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. It kind of makes the decision easier, because especially at quarterback, when you have half the, this is also last year our consensus was CJ Stroud was quarterback one in last year's group, but we had a couple guys that thought Bryce Young should have been up there, and it makes for interesting debate and interesting conversation. But this one, it was I don't know many people that have Jaden over Caleb, and by no means do we think Caleb is a poor quarterback.
No.
Right? We've evaluated thousands of players dating back to last summer, and he's going to finish as our number 2 player, or maybe number 3 if you want to put Marvin Harrison up there. So, we like Caleb a lot. We think that he's unique. I think if he hits his ceiling, his upside is higher than Jaden Daniels, but I feel safer with Jaden, and I like how his career trajectory, what has actually happened on the field over the past 5 years, going from Arizona State to LSU, and just everything about his game, I trust just at a slightly higher level than Caleb.
All right, so who does have the second pick now?
So now we're going to Washington.
All right.
And that's you.
That's me. Okay, so then, the board is going to be the board. So really, this is going to come down to whether or not it's Daniels or May. That's what we're hearing. Nothing has slipped. At some point in the next probably few days, I think we're gonna get an idea, sort of like last year.
I will say I got a message this morning that it's gonna be Jaden.
You did? Okay, so let's go ahead and put him in there then.
I don't think it's gonna be in the news, but I don't have many sources. I am not Adam Schefter. I am not one of those guys. But there's every now and then, this close to the draft, I do get a couple little knee jerks here, like, hey, guess what? And it's I was told it's going to be Jaden to Washington.
All right, well, there you go. And look, good for them for a few reasons, including the fact that I hope it doesn't give the Patriots an opportunity to get him as a Jet fan. Even though we're hearing that if he was available, they may not go that route, which I would be ecstatic about. I do not want Jaden Daniels in the AFC East. So please, Washington, I hope that works out. Okay, so then the Patriots go, and this very well could happen. So they're up. Now, some people are even thinking, could it be J.J. McCarthy? But Drake May is like the unanimous top 3. You have, though, McCarthy as your 3rd overall quarterback. And then there's another option. Now, look, we're not doing trades, but there's a lot also out there about should the Patriots kind of punt on the first season with the new head coach, and there's so many needs that they have that if they trade out here, because they do have needs at wide receiver, big needs, wide receiver, quarterback, and offensive line, that if they trade down, they can take care of 2 big needs in one draft, and that might still be taking a quarterback, but they could just go, you know what, let's trade down, let's get a wide receiver, let's get a number 1 wide receiver, let's get a number 1 tackle, and then we'll go the quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. If that works out, great. If it doesn't, we'll be a top 10 drafted team next year, and we'll do whatever it takes to get our quarterback then. That could happen. I don't know what you think, what the percentages are that would happen, but I'm thinking that's at least 50-50 to me.
Yeah, I would say it's a coin flip, and to me, this is where the draft starts, and it's going to be a dramatic night. I hope things stay under wrap, because this right now seems like it's going to be the most exciting top 10 draft that we've had in a really long time. and it starts right here at number 3 overall. I believe if they go quarterback, it will be Drake May. I believe I'm in the minority when I have J.J. McCarthy above him based on ceiling and upside and a couple of recent big arm projects, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, that have panned out because they got put into really good situations. And, a front office that is starting over, even though they're all in-house, right? New head coach, new GM are in-house replacements, but it is year 1 for them. And that's where confidence is the highest. Hey, we have a long-term plan. New GM, Elliott Wolf. He was the former director of scouting. His father is the infamous Ron Wolf, a Hall of Fame executive from Green Bay and the author of The Packer Way. The Packer Way, it's a great book. It's very basic. It's meant for small businesses, but you can actually relate this to football. And there's 9 steps. And Elliott Wolf has said we're going to build this like the Packers have built their. So the first 2 steps.
That means wide receiver is not going to be a part of that.
Exactly. I think wide receiver is not even an option. I think there's 2 options: you trade down or you pick the quarterback. And step 1 of the Packer Way is identify what needs to be fixed. They identified the quarterback needs to be fixed. What do? They trade Mac Jones to be a backup in Jacksonville. And then step 2 of the Packer Way: hire the best before anyone else does. And that, to me, in regard to the NFL draft, is get the quarterback before everyone else does. Drake May is going to have a market in this league if he passes by 3 and they go elsewhere or they trade out. And just considering that the Green Bay Packers are okay with taking a quarterback and sitting him on the bench for an entire year, no pressure from the outside will make them put him on the field. That's the situation Drake May needs to be in. And Drake May is the best pure pocket passer in this class. Both his arm, his size, and his ability to maneuver within the pocket with his eyes downfield. He is very, very good in that department, better than everybody else. There are issues with his game. He scares the living crap out of me, but so did Josh Allen. So did Justin Herbert. So the Jacoby Brissett.
He does have a lot of Josh Allen in him, doesn't he?
He does, but I will say one thing Josh Allen has that Josh Allen was a lot tougher and just a lot. Josh Allen is part of what makes Josh Allen so good is he's so tough to get to the ground and he makes a lot happen with his legs. And Drake May is a good athlete, but he's not as tough as Josh Allen is. Josh Allen's got a lot of farmer boy in him. He wants to get into a street fight. I don't see that in Drake May. But I think it's, after considering trade offers from the Vikings and the Giants, who I don't think either one of those teams are going to overpay for a quarterback, especially if J.J. McCarthy is still in play, I think New England's going to sit tight and take Drake May.
All right. So let me go ahead and type that in there. So Drake, and what would you say the biggest concern is for Drake May?
Just really inconsistent. And the inconsistency issues come from a lot of his lower body techniques. He does have a kind of like a different lower body, not just his footwork, his hips. He throws the ball differently, and he's just, the basketball illustration I gave here is he'll hit 5 threes in a row and then he'll go miss 2 layups and a free throw. It just doesn't make sense, and that consistency can hurt you in college, but you could still survive. In the NFL, you won't survive.
Okay, Arizona's next, and we know Arizona's not taking a quarterback. Isn't it funny how things changed so dramatically? Like towards the end of last season, there were so many whispers and so many pundits. Oh, this is such a great quarterback class. They're just gonna dump Murray, and they're gonna get their new quarterback. And then all of a sudden, the last month or two, crickets. And that's because Jonathan Gannon has made it known. Everybody knows now that he loves Murray. That he's going to be there for as long as Gannon's there. So, that's why that's not even been talked about anymore. But Arizona has 11 picks. They have 2 in the first, correct?
Yep.
2 in the first.
Yep.
What was that deal for?
That was, they maneuvered a lot in the draft last year. They traded out so that Houston could trade up for Will Anderson. They got a king's ransom for that, and then they traded back up to grab Paris Johnson, but they still won out. They really worked the phones well last year and put themselves in a good spot.
Yeah, they have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds, but their top needs are wide receiver, as far as my research, wide receiver, edge, and corner. So, and of course, Marvin Harrison is just staring there right in front of everybody's faces as the wide receiver. I think it's a little bit early for edge and corner. So I'm not even going to screw around, and I'm just going to go ahead and take Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, easy choice there. And it's there's a lot to like about Harrison Jr. beyond just his name. It's not just the lineage that he has. He's by far the most polished receiver, and he didn't work out, which was weird to me, even at his pro day. And I kind of like the answer. His agent probably was all over this because it made him look good, that he didn't want to waste any time, or lose any time trying to make himself a better wide receiver by running 40s and shuttles and 3 cones. Like, go watch the tape. 40 times, I'm wondering, I was talking to a couple draft analysts leading up to the combine, that a lot of these guys that back out, it just becomes more and more common every year. They don't want to run all the drills. And it's because part of the reason is the GPS data that you get from tracking these guys that all teams have access to. Do you really care about the 40 time, or do you care how fast these guys move on game day? And Harrison has constantly clocked in at 23 miles an hour. And that's usually reserved for guys that are 4.4 or best. So that he plays to a speed. I also think he's a more polished route runner than all these guys, so he plays faster than his times. It's just it feels safe with Marvin Harrison, and I think that's exactly what Kyler Murray needs.
Do you think that, because I happen to believe it, but look, I understand how talented this receiver class is, but do you think that there is most people think, okay, they've got a top 3, and then you start with the next. Is it really, though, a 1, and then a 2, 3, and then the rest?
So I label them 1A, 1B, 1C. I have them, I have my own numerical grading system, and they're right there with each other.
So you don't really think Harrison is way ahead of Odunze or Neighbors?
I don't, and it's not a knock on Harrison at all. Odunze and Neighbors both have traits, standout physical traits, that Harrison does not. And there are a couple of things about Harrison Jr. game that doesn't make. Is he going to be a Justin Jefferson type? Like, is he that competitive? You don't see him break a lot of tackles.
You're right.
You don't see him get over and stay over the top vertically. It's can he be his father, which is a Hall of Fame receiver? You're going to take that top 5 all day. But with the recent influx of receivers that come into the league and impact the game right away at a high level for a rookie contract price, it's one of the best bargains in football right now. And that's why, I think you're going to see a couple of receivers traded draft weekend that are just that they're end of the rookie deal. Let's grab one of these guys. And, but that's the thing about Harrison Jr. is he's going to be good, but I don't think he's got this limitless ceiling. I would even say the ceiling of Odunze and Neighbors is higher than Harrison, but the floor is much higher with Harrison.
Okay, next up, this would be the first pick under the Harbaugh regime. And we also get into a situation where we wonder, is this also a trade possibility? Because he's going to want to reshape a lot, even though the roster's good, but he's going to want to reshape it. And the other question is going to be, how many Wolverines will end up on the team? Probably more guys like the middle round guys, and maybe even some free agents. So probably, the free agents, so he'll get whoever he wants. But and it could maybe even some former guys. Maybe Eric All ends up on the team. That kind of thing. So, but they want to take advantage of the fact that Harbaugh, especially for the first couple of years, he's recruited a lot of these guys, and whether they made it to Michigan or not, he knows these guys. He's not going to know them as much in 3 or 4 years, so they got to take advantage of these couple of years while he still has a lot of familiarity with these kids.
Yeah. This is a tough call. It's funny, in January, when the Our Lads channel was just starting, I was asked to make a few reels and, get some of my mock draft material out there, and I mocked Joe Alt to the Chargers, and nobody was on that page at that time. And I just said, hey, Harbaugh he wants to draft linemen. He wants to control the line of scrimmage. He's gonna run the ball. I could see him going after Blake Corum at some point, just for the familiarity, but also just he's got that NFL back in him in Blake Corum. And if he gets into the right situation like this one, I think he does well. But then I did not expect them to get rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I did believe they would get rid of one of them. And so that was a red flag to me in terms of them going tackle right away. So, but not enough to make me cross it off. Part two, they didn't sign anyone. I mean, look at the Ourlads depth chart that you have up right there right now. Nobody is in that aqua color. And the aqua color is reserved for guys that they brought into the system this year via free agency. And
you mean a receiver?
Yeah, they didn't bring any receivers in.
Yeah, they only have 4 guys.
Yeah, I mean, so you guaranteed they're going to draft at least one wide receiver. And Darius Davis, the slot that you have up there, he's a return specialist. He was drafted last year for that reason. And I know every coach is going to say, "Oh, he could be a slot. He could be a gimmick, a gadget guy." You don't want him as your number 3. So I really feel like they're missing a starter right now at wide receiver. And they're staring. And Quentin Johnston, who was drafted in the first round last year, that's the previous regime, did not have a good rookie season. He was a guy that we said it was going to take a couple of years anyway. So I don't think you count him out. But you know what Josh Palmer is. You can get that guy anytime in free agency or the draft. So I look at this wide receiver room, and I think it's one of the worst 5 in football. And
you'd be right.
The right tackle, Trey Pipkins, I wouldn't call him good, but he's serviceable.
For now.
He has a contract. You can't get rid of it this year. He's on this team this year. There's no question he's going to be on this team. So now I'm starting to talk myself out of drafting a left tackle to put him at right tackle that might be playing behind Trey Pipkins, while you also have all-pro receivers staring you right in the eyes. And the last kicker here is I did some research on Harbaugh when he was with the Niners as a head coach and as a head coach at Michigan. He wasn't a blue-chip offensive lineman guy. He had a style of guys that he wanted. And what did he do? He attacked the transfer portal and got these 5th-year graduate students that had 1 year left that really projected to be 5th, 6th, 7th undrafted free agent type grades. They weren't dominant offensive linemen. They played well together, and combined with his system, they did well. Some could question how good they were pass blocking in 2023, but it was still a good offensive line. But it was patchwork. It was kind of random pieces. And knowing his propensity to not attack offensive lines super early when he was with the Niners, I'm going with wide receiver here. And because of what they did with Johnson last year, I think they're going to get a different flavor and go after Malik Neighbors.
Okay. Now, question regarding Alt. Is this too early for Alt?
No, it's not. I have a really high grade on Alt and Fashanu, and if they are saying, hey, we want 2 really good tackles to protect our franchise quarterback, it's not too early. The risk is, and not everyone agrees with me when I say this, it's not super easy to transition from left tackle to right tackle. Most guys can do it. Some guys can't, though. So, Alt is not this, all-pro projection. There are some things I don't like about his tape. That's why he finished as my number 2 tackle. Fashanu is my number 1, but just in terms of long-term projection and these guys reaching their ceiling. But I don't think it's too early. I wouldn't criticize the pick, but you got to tell me what you're doing at receiver. It's almost like you put yourself in a position where you have to take a receiver in round 2, and now you lose control of who's there.
Look, I think when you're talking just about pure talent and also the fact that we just don't know. We could say what we want about Harbaugh at college, but we all just don't know. And he also has a general manager, so we don't know. So picking Neighbors makes a lot of sense just based on what you talked about. I think, though, I actually believe that there's more of a likelihood that the Chargers trade than the Patriots trade. I think the Chargers are trading out of here, even if it's just a few spots, because someone's going to want a quarterback. I think the Chargers are letting everybody know that if you want J.J. McCarthy, come get him, and because we want to move down, especially if you want to leapfrog the Giants, who everybody believes might be targeting McCarthy. So I think that's a perfect spot for anybody, Minnesota, anybody that wants McCarthy and you want to go ahead of the Giants. I think this is what's going to happen because I do. And it also opens up the opportunity, possibly, if they trade down a couple of spots, to take Brock Bowers. Okay. So we know that Disley, 1 check, great blocking tight end. So he's got the 1 check. Yep. But he doesn't have the check for receiver at tight end. And we know how big that's going to be for him. And if he can get Brock Bowers on this team, he's not taking him at 5, but if he can get Brock Bowers on this team, I think he'd be obviously ecstatic. But yeah, I mean, just knowing him as a Michigan fan, it's about the trenches. It's about building that offensive line, as you said. I'm intrigued by what you also said about Alt, whether or not he can play right compared to left and all of that. No, that's a valid. And now let me ask you a question: if he trades down and Alt, who knows where he trades down? But let's just say Alt's off the board. Which of the other tackles would fit more as a right tackle?
Good question. Not Fashanu. I would probably say Amarius Mims would be the swing for the fence.
Really?
He's only started 7 games. J.C. Latham would probably give him a run for his money. This is what my thought on Amarius Mims is, and I'm sure he's going to get drafted somewhat in this mock. But if this kid hits 80% of his ceiling, he's a Pro Bowler.
Yeah,
and the risk is he has started 7 games. There's a couple of different injuries on a 350-pound frame. You know, that always concerns me. Like, there is such a thing as being too big for the NFL, especially if you have lower body injuries, that they're just harder to bounce back from. But I really like this kid's game, and he is as much of a road grader as anyone. I love Troy Fautanu. I have a higher grade on him. I don't know if he's the best ideal fit for the right side at tackle. So, I mean, you really have 3 guys staring you in the eyes that you know, if he trades down, he doesn't have to panic if these guys start getting, you know, picked off one by one, because you have Fautanu, Mims, Latham, and even Fuaga, who it was a right tackle at Oregon State, would be really good fits for what they want to do.
Okay. Giants are next. And a lot of talk about McCarthy, which is why I said there's a chance that maybe a team pops ahead of him and makes a deal with the Chargers. I don't think that's happening. I think with Daniel Jones on the roster, you still got the same head coach who agreed to the deal. I think they're going to give Daniel Jones a shot. I just do. And honestly, I think if the head coach believed in Daniel Jones last year, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't give him another shot. So the big question, though, now becomes offensive line is such a big need then. Also wide receiver, but now we go to what you just talked about. Okay, now we can't really judge, and that's why we're not going to get into it, whether or not or will Alt fit there, Fashanu, and so forth. So I'm just going to go best offensive lineman, let them work it out, and go with Alt as the pick for the Giants here.
Got it.
What would you be? What would you be considering here as well?
Odunze or Alt. It would come down to one of those two. I mean, I'm a McCarthy guy. I do agree with you, and I've been saying this for a long time. I've been getting a lot of hate for this too. That it just, to me, I would take McCarthy or Odunze, just one of those two. I don't think the front office is going to give up on Jones. They just signed him last year. He played 6 games behind an awful offensive line to a rich contract that you can't get out of this year, and next year it's going to cost $27 million to get out of. So you kind of lose this whole rookie quarterback contract window by drafting someone. And you know, it's going to be a horrific situation if they draft a quarterback and Daniel Jones marches out there and throws an interception week 1. I mean, it's, you know, these guys in the NFL, they have egos. And they put their ego on the line with Daniel Jones, and they have Drew Lock as a safety net. That I think they're going to try to build around Daniel Jones at least for another year and see what he can do in a much more favorable situation. And favorable situation can come from a more dynamic playmaker in Rome Odunze, or keep him upright because his injuries are coming from just getting hit too much. I mean, the Giants allowed more sacks than anyone in the NFL last year. And, I mean, they were setting records early in the year with how often their quarterbacks were getting hit. So Joe Alt comes in and essentially moves Evan Neal into a guard spot. And now you have a real legitimate competition between a couple of the signings they made in free agency, Evan Neal, Joe Alt, and we say, dude, best 5 are playing. Let's see what you got. You know, I mean, I don't know what happened to Evan Neal. As of right now, this is one of my biggest misses ever along the offensive line. And that's an area where I'm really confident scouting and projecting to the NFL. I don't know. I went back and watched his college tape this past winter. And he looks like a different dude. He's not moving the same. It's a weird thing, and maybe it's coaching. Or maybe he got comfortable. So now Joe Alt's going to come in and be like, no more comfort here. You're getting shifted inside, or you're going to get traded.
Yeah.
And I think that might be how you get the best out of Evan Neal as a guard. He did play guard his freshman year at Alabama, so he can do it.
That might not be yeah, exactly, and maybe that's the perfect switch for him before he does land somewhere else. Who knows? Maybe another team comes around during the draft and says, "Hey, how much for Evan Neal?" Not that they'll get much, but that's maybe something that does happen if they draft an offensive tackle first. Okay, Tennessee, you're up next, and I think Tennessee fans have to be really excited because I think they've made some really interesting, bold moves in free agency with the new head coach, Brian Callahan coming in. They've get the master offensive line coach, which is so huge for this team. I don't think there's an assistant coach in the NFL that is as much of a difference maker outside of the coordinators as Callahan as the offensive line coach. And we know how much this team needs that. And they still need offensive linemen. We talked about that last year. So, this is a team that has offensive line needs and so forth. They had the big splash move for Calvin Ridley and a few other interesting moves, including Pollard. They get their center. So what do you think about Tennessee? Is this an obvious slam dunk, definite decision move here?
To me, it is. They've done a great job adding pieces on both sides of the ball, especially just a little bit of support system for this young quarterback. Now they're entering this Will Levis era now, and he flashed last year. I actually was somewhat impressed when he got on the field. I mean, to me, he immediately looked better and added a different dimension to that offense than Ryan Tannehill did. And not that Ryan Tannehill is heading towards Canton, but to do this as a second-round pick in year one, I was impressed. Now it's about building around him. And Tony Pollard and Cushenberry and Calvin Ridley still have DeAndre Hopkins, still have
Ridley and Hopkins, and Burks.
There's talent there, but it doesn't matter if you can't keep them upright. That's the one area they didn't address tackle. I know they have a backup in Leroy Watson, but Olu Fashanu is a guy that at this time last year almost came out. He was like the Amarius Mims of last year. He was not very experienced, but we knew this kid was going to be good. He decided to go back to school. And I was ready to almost just, etch it in stone. This kid's going to be tackle one in this class, an elite Pro Bowl projection. And I'll tell you what, 2023, it didn't go as well as I thought. But I still think there are pieces to his game that you cannot teach. He's a very young kid. He's very smart. He's mature. He just had a couple bad beats against future first-round picks from Ohio State. I mean, really, the Ohio State tape is what hurt him. And if the kid has a bad game or two, I don't know if it's enough for me to take him out of that top 10 consideration, franchise left tackle, signed, sealed, delivered. They use an early pick on Peter Skoronski, who shifted inside to left guard, which is what we thought would happen no matter what. I think you put Fashanu in that left tackle, a position that allowed 88 pressures for Tennessee last year, which was number 1 in the NFL, between just a revolving door of guys that just don't belong in a starting lineup at that spot. This is a pretty easy choice for me for so many reasons, and I still believe in Fashanu. He's my pick here at number 7.
Yeah, I agree. This is a slam dunk, and even the right tackle was better last year, so that was promising. So all of a sudden, I'll tell you right now, they bring in a offensive tackle, which I think we both agree is going to happen. With last year's draft, this offseason, this draft, they're going to be one of the top 10 offensive lines of football. Yeah, because of the coach. And I'll tell you what, the coach, his previous 2 stops, Cleveland and Washington, that franchise, both those franchises, in his first or second year with that team, used their first-round pick on a high first-round pick on an offensive lineman. In Washington, it was Brandon Sheriff from Iowa, and in Cleveland, it was Jedrick Wills from from Alabama. So interesting that didn't work out. That's interesting thing is that's why it shows you what a great offensive line coach is going to be. First of all, you're not going to hit on everybody, but it's not just that he elevated the easy first round guy. It's that he elevated all the other guys that nobody really even ever heard of before.
Yeah. So I think no matter what they do, it's good. I think he's going to have a big say in let's get this guy. Let me develop him. Let's get this thing on the right track.
All right, Atlanta, and this will put an end to the first quarter of our draft here. And the Falcons, of course, had a big decision last year, and they decided, yes, we're going to punt on the season. We're going to make this as the big off season, and they started out, of course, with the coaching change and so forth. Overall, you take a look, and they also, of course, by losing their coach, who just wanted nothing to do with their wide receiver game, and that's why it's going to be an interesting switch now, depending on exactly what kind of talent they have at that room. Now, they've added the most free agents to that room, which is not a surprise, including Mooney and Moore via trade. So I think that they're in good shape there. But, the Falcons, if you look at it, they still have got. Also the other thing too is that Caleb McGarry, he really improved over the last couple of years, and that solidified the offensive line. So they actually have one of the more underrated offensive lines in football. I think one of the things that they definitely need, though, is really more on defense. Once, of course, we talk because once they made the decision to go with Kirk Cousins, they basically made that decision that we're not going to the draft. We're going with Cousins for the next few years. I think that they might, sort of like the Jets. I think they're going to go into like the middle rounds and probably grab a young quarterback to the roster. I think that would make that room perfect. You'd have your veteran backup, your starting quarterback, and your project to work on for a couple of years. But that's not something we're going to talk about right now. I think that they need somebody to line up opposite Jesse Bates at safety. That's something they're going to take care of a little bit later on in the draft. But here, and they have to decide at nickel, which I also think is a little early here. But here's the thing, is that they also desperately need an edge rusher. And I know there have been a lot of people that I've spoken to. I'm gonna pop up your edge rusher, and I did pop up the fact that you had Fashanu as your number one tackle on the board, which maybe not a lot of people thought about that would be the case. But if we look at your edge rushers now, Latu. The thing with Latu, of course, that everybody's thinking about are his medicals. And I think that is definitely going to move him down the draft, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to take a chance on him early. He could end up the best edge rusher in the class. The other player that seems to be moving up a little bit is Dallas Turner. And I don't know why, other than just, I don't know. Is it Alabama? Is it the allure of what maybe even Turner, what they thought he was going to be at Alabama, but I don't think we ever saw that at Alabama. So, matter of fact, you have Verse fourth. A lot of people believe that Verse could be a top 12 or top 14 pick. So I guess the question here then is, I think Atlanta would love to take an edge rusher. And if Latu didn't have medicals, I think he would be the clear go here then for them. But because of that, I'm just having a hard time believing that they would take Dallas Turner at 8, even though that's what I think a lot of people are thinking about if they go edge rusher here. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think this spot is primed for an edge rusher, and Raheem Morris does drop his edge rushers into coverage more than your traditional defensive coordinator. You're not going to draft a guy here to drop back in coverage, I know, but I'm just trying to envision what kind of skill set are these guys going to look for if they pursue edge. And to me, Dallas Turner dropped back into coverage 3 times more than any of these guys.
Okay.
In the top 6.
Okay.
So that kind of like, if they go edge rusher, I think it's a no doubt Dallas Turner. But the position that I think they could use equal amount of help, and I think Raheem Morris would lean in this direction, is corner. And you have to ask yourself, does Kenyon Mitchell, who's a very toolsy corner, but he's coming from Toledo, he's coming from the MAC, is that someone that Raheem Morris can really get behind? So to me, this is another trade out opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you might have a couple of teams being like, hey, JJ's still there. Minnesota pick is coming up. If we don't trade in front of them, they're going to get them. That's where I think Atlanta could probably maybe get a future pick or just accrue some extra capital for this group, because who they want here is probably going to be available, or his equal will be available a few picks later.
All right,
but we got to make a pick.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and put Turner here, Dallas Turner.
Okay.
I think it's a logical way to go. But I do agree with you that I believe that the way it's working out for us, we could definitely see Atlanta trading out of this spot if McCarthy is still available on the clock. So so that'll be and that'll wrap up our first quarter of the draft, putting Dallas Turner in there. Okay, so next up, it's your turn.
Yep. We're back to Chicago, a team that I've been on the radio with Mullion Hall in Chicago several times over the past few months. And, this pick comes up more than the first pick, obviously, because we already know what's going to happen at pick 1. But this can go in two directions. One of them can be, this entire offseason has been about, hey, build the support system for our future quarterback, a.k.a. Caleb Williams. They've added receivers. They've changed up the offensive line. They've added a running back. Now, this is one of the best situations to ever put a rookie quarterback into. And now I wrestle with two things here. Number one, do you build up the defense so he doesn't have to chase points again like he did at USC, which that's when Caleb Williams, the worst in him comes out.
Yep. Is
that he tries to be Superman. He puts that cape on and kind of loses track of how to play the quarterback position. So you can make there is a spot, in my opinion, for an edge rusher. DeMarcus Walker would be a great number 3. Dominique Robinson is a great guy to have off the bench. They got Montez Sweat. Then the other side of me says they've already put resources into the defensive line. Multiple day 2 picks last year inside. They trade a second rounder for Montez Sweat. They re-signed DeMarcus Walker. At some point
they need an upgrade though, right on the other side at defensive end though. They do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and what works best with the scheme that they're trying to put into? Like, what's a good complement to what they have? And I come down to Latu, or because he's more of a skillful rusher, technique guy, can beat one-on-one blockers a lot of different ways, or they go for the physical freak in Jared Verse. And I love Jared Verse in the power game. I like rushers that have a power element to their game. But then I'm sitting here and I'm looking at Rome Odunze and the fact that they still have Tyler Scott starting
he's not
at wide
ready.
receiver.
No, he's not ready. No.
And I think Tyler Scott is a deep threat that you just give a couple deep balls to per game, and you hope it works out. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be on the field. And he might only be a 1-year rental, and he's a slot only. So who's playing outside?
Nobody. Maybe Rome Odunze.
I'm going to go with Rome Odunze with this pick. And it really kind of sets up Caleb with every single kind of weapon this kid needs, both for the short term and long term. And I think Rome Odunze he's a safe personality. He's not a diva like some of these wide. And you don't want to have Caleb Williams come in and kind of set up this diva type mentality and culture. You want to get some of these guys in here. And I think the combination of Odunze, who's his age, and Keenan Allen, who's going to be a mentor, it's just a really good setup. And I think that's the theme of the Bears offseason so far, and I'm just going to add to it.
Yeah, I think you hit on all the guys I had. It was either offensive tackle, maybe, but I think because the top 2 guys are out, I'm not so sure that's something. Plus, we don't know what they think about Braxton Jones. He's done a good job, but we don't know whether or not they believe that they still need to kind of upgrade that position. But why would you why would you feel that when you have other big needs, like you said, like Odunze's on the board, or Verse, or maybe even Latu? So I'm with you on all of those. And why not take a player like Odunze, especially as we just talked about with what they need at wide receiver? That could be really scary. You have your young quarterback being able to throw the football to Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore. So that'd be pretty nice.
That's a great situation for him.
Yeah.
All right, you're up with the Jets now.
All right, so basically it's just all about checking to see who's available for me. So, by the way, McCarthy, of course, still on the board. I think the Jets should trade down, by the way, if they can. And if McCarthy's still on the board, I think they need to think about doing that. And I say that because I think they should be. I think they need to recoup the second-round pick, and I think they need to add a young quarterback in the room. But that would be like a second-rounder. They don't have that right now. So I think the Jets could definitely do that. There's a lot of talk about Brock Bowers here. I just think that's just overkill. I don't see how they need Brock Bowers. Would I like to have him? Of course. Who wouldn't want to have Brock Bowers? But it's overkill. They don't need him. They need other positions like offensive line, especially. And I know, everybody's looking at the offensive line in general, and they've made some nice improvements. But the offensive line, those are one-year guys. And there's just no way that Joe Douglas is going to risk what happened last year with injuries, and then he's got to go all of a sudden. You're looking at Max Mitchell and Carter Warren as your bookend tackles. He's just not doing it. So he's picking a tackle here if he doesn't trade down. Who's left on our board at tackle? Latham.
You have Latham, Mims, Fautanu, you have Fuaga, Tyler Guyton.
By the way, let's just put it this way. There's no way he's taking Mims because that'll be too much of a risk.
Yep, that's a Mekhi Becton kind of like part 2.
Yes.
He's probably scarred from that.
So now you talked about on one of the shows, I think it was our mock draft show, you talked about Fautanu, didn't you, because of his versatility?
He's one of my top 10 players on my board overall. I just put together a top 150 for USA Today, and that's where I put positional value into the grades. So, a guy with the same grade, a tackle with the same grade as a center, the tackle wins out by a lot.
Yeah, there it is right there.
Fautanu, he ended up as my number 9 overall player on my board, and I love him for the Jets because he gives you another Elijah Vera Tucker type where he literally incredibly can project to guard and tackle at the next level. And with what the Jets did this offseason at tackle, I like and respect it, but you need to start making plans for what you're going to do when Tyron Smith goes down. Because there's one guarantee to his game: he's not going to last all year.
Yep. So
what's the plan? Don't figure it out like they have, last second. And this is a guy that gives them a lot of options.
Well, they are high on Carter Warren, but I think you have to look at 2025 as who are your bookends? All right. Well, right. I think they want Carter Warren at right tackle and this pick at left tackle.
Got it.
So that's what I think that they're looking at. Yeah,
Makes
it's
sense.
a no-brainer. In my book, I'd be shocked if there's a credible offensive tackle on the board and he goes with Brock Bowers. I would just be completely shocked. Even though again, as a fan, you'd be excited about it, but I can't see it. Okay. Next up is Minnesota, right? So they don't even have to trade up, do they? If they want McCarthy.
It's possible. All this talk about these guys trading up. I mean, we're not doing trades in this mock. If you put a gun to my head, yes, I think there's going to be a trade up at some point for the 4th quarterback taken, whether it's Drake May or J.J. McCarthy. But, the draft might come to whoever wants J.J. McCarthy. You might not have to trade up for him. He's a really interesting case. I think there's, just like in the media, there's going to be a lot of love and hate for him. There's going to be some guys who say, hey, we can't put our eggs in this basket. A, with a pick, and B, with trading future picks. But if he comes to us and we don't feel pressure to put him on the field, which they won't because they signed Darnold, so he'll at least start the year for them. And then they get their 21-year-old quarterback of the future type. So I am definitely going to go with J.J. McCarthy here at 11. Pretty easy decision. You went Fautanu for the Jets? Just want to make sure.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So all right, let's just say all quarterbacks are off.
Yep.
Give me another pick for Minnesota.
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, they need some interior offensive line help. If Fautanu's gone, he's out. But J.C. Latham, Talise Fuaga, they can project inside. And they probably would rather wait until later on. I think they could use a true number 1 corner. I like their cornerback room. I think there's a lot of young talent there, but I don't think any of them project to be a number 1. So I would probably go with the cornerback 1 in this class and go with Kenyon Mitchell.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Absolutely. Yep. And he also could use a little bit more inside at defensive tackle. But corner staring you right in the face. And I think it's an obvious move if they don't have a quarterback. Okay. Denver is next, and this is another team that everybody's talking about, quarterback, and is this this is why it's going to be interesting, especially with Denver, because we only have the experience with Peyton once. That's it, and
right.
they made the move and they were able to get Breeze. But that's it. We don't have a lot of other experience on what he wants to do with the quarterback position. But you just still have to believe that even if the top 4 quarterbacks were gone, I just think I can't see him not taking a quarterback. And I think he's already deciding, okay, what do I do? Do we trade up? If we don't trade up big, and especially you get these guys too, like Peyton, that their ego.
Yep.
I can do this. I can elevate this guy. I don't need one of those top 3 guys. I can figure out a way with McCarthy or Nix or Penix. I can make it work with one of them. And I can't believe that he wouldn't say that to himself. So the question then would lie, if we don't make a trade and we sit here and it's Nix and Penix. To me, I think it's Nix, just because of the fact that you do have some injury concerns with Penix. I like the fact that they're both experienced. That's great for the future, but I do think Nix is the better prospect, and that's why I'm going to put him here.
I like it. I agree with it. Bo Nix is he's a guy that I think fits in with Sean Payton really well too, physically and mentally. Sean Payton is a big hand size guy. I was told that by a guy that was around him in his early days of coaching with the Giants and the Cowboys, that it's something he almost will obsess about in the evaluation process. And Bo Nix, and it's not just it's not just semantics. It's he really believes in pump fake. So I mean, Drew Brees took his game to another level when Sean Payton really taught him how to take advantage of pump fakes. And it's a lot easier to do that, especially in bad weather, when you can really wrap your fingers around that ball. I mean, Drew Brees, 10.5-inch hands. Russell Wilson, 10.5-inch hands. These are guys that he just recently has associated with. J.J. McCarthy, 9-inch hands. That's bottom rung if you go measure all these guys in the NFL. And, Bo Nix has that big size. I also think he can take hard coaching, really experienced. He's the son of a coach, a legendary high school coach. And he's been around the block. He's been through a lot of adversity, a lot of high-pressure situations. And Sean Payton himself says he is not an easy guy to play for if you're a quarterback. Like, you have to have some thick skin. And we've seen this with quarterbacks coming out of college all the time. They can't handle it. Can't handle the physical pressure, can't handle the mental and emotional pressure. True. And Bo Nix, to me, is going to be, there are issues I have with him physically, but mentally, I think he's going to be dialed in. He'll be on that straight line, won't get too high, won't get too low. So, Denver, the fact that they haven't made any aggressive moves in free agency this year at quarterback, I mean, it seems, and they don't really have a ton of capital to trade up with. I think they know, and they've known for a while, they're just going to sit tight and know that no one's going to hop in front of them to take Bo Nix. And that they're just going to sit tight and take that guy and ride him into the future.
Yeah. And they did a lot of shuffling to open up cap space, which they needed. Getting rid of trading and getting rid of guys. And so, I mean, that's another thing to keep an eye on, is whether or not is there's a team out there that wants to trade up, doesn't need a quarterback, but they want to trade out. Hey, you know what? The number 1 corner is on the board, or such and such edge rusher is on the board, or such and such tackle we want. All right, we'll move down 2 or 3 spots because we still think we'll get Bo Nix. So I wouldn't. So let's keep, because Denver needs more talent. They could definitely use, even though I believe they have a good amount of picks overall. I forget the number, but they do have a good 9 total picks. But let's keep in mind they do not have a second rounder. So 6 of those 9 are after the 5th round. So Denver is definitely a trade out candidate, but the question would then be how far. Okay, Vegas is next.
Yeah, Vegas, to me, I don't think they're going quarterback here, and it's a little rich for the risky Michael Penix. I mean, they have a 2-year deal with Gardner Minshew. Aiden O'Connell with his coaching staff went 500 last year, and we're seeing the success of Brock Purdy. I do think that has a trickle-down effect to some of these teams saying, like, hey, let's give this kid a shot. Let's build it around him and see if we can, get an immense value of paying a day 3 rookie for a few years as we build the rest of the roster. They get aggressive with Christian Wilkins and the defensive line. That's a great 1-2 punch with Max Crosby, and hopefully Tyree Wilson can blossom in year 2 after being a top 10 pick in 2023. I'm going to lean towards corner here. I think they're really vulnerable at that spot with Jack Jones, who is a playmaker, but he's been into some trouble off the field at Arizona State when Antonio Pierce was there, by the way, and in New England. He got cut last year because of it. Jacorian Bennett was drafted because he ran a fast 40 last year. He got beat up pretty bad as a rookie, and which is fine. I'm not
writing
him
they
off.
like him. Yeah, they still like
but
him.
This is another team similar to Minnesota. They need a number one guy, or at least a guy that they think can be number one. I love Nate Hobbs at nickel. I think that's where he does his best work. But I think you bring in Quinyon Mitchell, and even if he's not ready to jump from Toledo to the NFL, you have a couple of guys that can hold the fort for a half a season and let this guy get 15, 20 snaps a game. And if he responds well, then, hey, maybe you start developing into your true cornerback one in a division where you have to have a good pass defense. You're never going to get past the Chiefs if you can't stop the pass. So, I'm leaning pass rusher or corner here, and I think with the value of Quinyon Mitchell staring them in the eyes, a true outside guy, a dude that checked every box from season, combine, Senior Bowl, pretty confident this is going to be the choice if he ends up being there.
Yeah, I like it. Now, do you think he is the consensus number one corner?
No, I don't think he's consensus. I think it's going to be split between him and Arnold. I just, cornerback, you don't want to get too into measurables and speed, but corner is a position where it matters, what you run. And the size that he also brings to the table, the ball skills, he did everything, that a guy like this needs to be. We have not seen a first corner taken in a draft outside of the Power 5 conferences since 2008. It was Leotis McKelvin from Troy who went to Buffalo. And so that's what gives me pause is, hey, this guy played against the MAC receivers. Do we really know he can hang with NFL speed? He did it the Senior Bowl, but it was for a day.
What about Telesco? What about his Telesco's draft history? Does his draft history...
I looked into his draft history. There was a lot of trenches, a lot of offensive to defensive lines. I think half of his picks were offense defensive line in round one. Since other than the Justin Herbert year, defensive back was twice over that span. One was a corner, one was Derwin James.
Okay.
He does value tools, and if you're asking me who has the best tools among corners, it's Quinyon Mitchell, and it's not even that close. He's by far the tool-rich corner of the group.
I agree. I think he should be number one too. But like you said, a lot's going to depend on the general manager and if he's okay with going with that non-Power 5 guy. Okay, yep. Especially when they got the number one Power 5 guy also on the board. So yeah, but it should be. You would think if the top corners are, you would think it would be down to Arnold or Mitchell. So
yeah, absolutely. And Arnold, what Arnold gives them that Mitchell doesn't is a little bit more versatility. Plays the nickel, can play outside. He can even play safety in some looks. So if that's what they want, which I don't think that's what they want, because they invested in the safety position last year. They have a couple good guys. They have Hobbs to play the nickel. That's why I think they want a true bona fide outside dude.
All right, the Saints are next, and the Saints could definitely, there's a couple of needs on offense. They need a wide receiver. They need an offensive guard, but we're not going to worry about the guard situation just yet. Wide receivers a definite need. They also have to get better in the interior on defense. Now, they did it last year with Brzee, but they could still, they need another one, somebody else. So we're going to look there. We just took a corner, and this is going to be another corner situation here, potentially, because I'm not sure that I don't know what they think about Taylor. I know they drafted him. He was a second-round pick. They're probably going to give him time, so I don't think that they're going to just necessarily pass over on him. But overall depth, anyway, would make a smart move. Lattimore's getting up there in age, so I think a corner added to the team. So I think those are the top three early. I mean, as far as when we're looking at the draft board right now. So I'm going to take a look at yours. As a matter of fact, let me pop that up there while I do that. And so I think if it's defensive tackle, you've got I'm a little surprised you've got the kid from Clemson as your top guy.
Yeah, that honestly surprised me as well. But I put my grading. I try not to go based on feel. I have an equation, a little algorithm that I want to put all these factors in: production, health, length, speed, pass rush capability, pressure rate. And if you're looking for just a pass rusher, Newton and Murphy are definitely 1 and 1A. Those guys are better pass rushers than Rook. But Rook is more of an every down threat. Won't be a liability against the run. And I think he's a little underrated as a pass rusher. I think he's got more tools to work with that we just haven't seen yet because of the role that they had him play next to Tyler Davis at Clemson. I've talked to a couple of ACC linemen over the past couple of years. Whenever I get to talk to these guys, I always ask, who's the best player or the toughest player you've ever had to play against? And his name came up more often than anyone from the ACC. I think he's going to be a better pro than college player.
How high, let's just say Newton ends up being the number one defensive tackle. How high do you see Newton going?
Top 20. I think interior pass rushers are just becoming more and more in demand. You could even just see with the contracts some of these guys are getting now, that it's almost catching up to edge rushers. It's not quite there yet, but if you get it, I think Aaron Donald really has changed the game. The average defensive tackle is about 10 to 15 pounds lighter than they were even 10 years ago.
Okay.
And B, I think the value of what a guy can do as an interior pass rusher, to me, it's always been important. But now I think the league is actually saying, hey, if we can't get the dogs on the outside, let's go after these guys inside. And there are so many interior pass rushers in this class that you can't go wrong with either one of these top two, Newton and Murphy.
I do not think that even though they definitely have to add a wide receiver, it would be too early for Brian Thomas. So I'm going to go ahead and do the smart thing on the board because they need a corner. And I'm going to go ahead and take a corner. So I'm going to go ahead and put Arnold here for New Orleans.
I like it, and I like it because his best role, I think, at the next level is going to be nickel, and that's what they need the most in their defensive and the secondary. I don't think Alontae Taylor is going to work out there. He's either got to play outside corner or safety, and I think Arnold gives them that immediate contributor with a really high upside.
Okay, you are up next. We are at pick number 15 with the Colts.
So a couple different directions here. This is a front office that values the freak athlete. I think more than any team in the NFL. If you look at trends of who they've drafted, no matter what position, it's almost always just a freak of nature. They almost maybe even overvalue some workout scores. But if you're going to miss fast. And I think that's kind of where they fall in line. Like they have some prerequisites in their draft room that if a certain guy doesn't have a certain threshold, they won't even have him on their draft board. And then you look at some of these past things that they've done, and it's worked out more often than not. But I think it's going to be a pass catcher, and I'm torn between three guys. One of them is my next available wide receiver, Brian Thomas.
So you do think Thomas could go this high?
I do think he could. I think him and I'll say it now, he's not my fifth-ranked grade receiver, but Adonai Mitchell from Texas, when you're talking about freaks with size, weight, speed, leaping ability.
Yeah, I think he's a first-round guy, yeah.
I think he's going higher than everyone thinks. He is a little bit of a diva type, doesn't run hard routes. He even is open about it. He'll tell the media that he didn't run a route hard because he knew it wasn't coming his way. He doesn't block. He doesn't do anything after the catch. He's one of the worst guys after the catch. So, I don't know if that's a culture for Indianapolis. So I come down, but I also have Brock Bowers staring me in the eyes right now because, as much as this front office will talk
he's
up
still on the board.
He's still there. And I do think 15 is the floor for him. I just can't see him. He's got to be one of the top 5 players in this draft if you're not including value of position. And what gives me hesitation is he's a slot, and they have a slot. They drafted Josh Downs last year. You're not putting him outside. So can you get both of these guys on the field enough to justify using Brock Bowers as a 15th overall pick while you're still trotting out Alec Pierce as a starting wide receiver?
And they really, what they need is they need Pittman to be the 2. They need the 1. They don't have really the number 1 wide receiver. So if you believe Brian Thomas is a number 1 guy, then I see what you're saying. But man, if Bowers is sitting here, it is going to be awfully tough for Indianapolis to pass on him either. So they're going to have some tough decisions. And plus, they also need corners. Yeah. So this would be a very tough decision because they have cornerback issues. They got safety issues that I'm sure, well, at least one safety issue that they'll worry about later on, I would guess, unless they want to pick a guy like Cooper DeJean. And they also could use another edge guy. But it's going to be tough. Bowers, Thomas, corner.
So I circle back to, are we supporting our franchise quarterback that we used a top 5 pick on last year in Anthony Richardson? What can we do to make his life better? and that's why I'm going to stick with the receiver and assume that they can, go to war with these tight ends that they already have in the room. Because Brock Bowers, as good as he is, he's not toolsy. He's a great football player. And I think Ballard will choose tools over good football players, and that's going to be Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver from LSU.
Yeah, it is very interesting because I was talking to Kent Sterling, who does the Colts for us, and he did bring that up about, well, but if Bowers were to last, but I don't see that happening. But if he were to last, so it's like, wow, he's there. But yeah, that's why I'm saying it would be awfully tough for them to say no. But yeah, they need a number one receiver. Yeah, that's definite. Okay. Next up is Seattle. We'll wrap up the first half of the draft here, and of course they have a new head coach right now, so got to keep an eye on that. This one actually, I gotta say, it kind of looks. It does kind of look simple for me. I'm sure there's be a lot of Seahawks fans are probably hoping that this works out. But I think I don't know what the Sam Howell move does, because Michael Penix really you would think is the perfect fit here. Especially when the offensive coordinator came from Washington. I just can't imagine that they would pass on that situation. So I'm going to take Penix, but go ahead and talk about if they don't go quarterback, what other possibilities that they would go.
Yeah, I love the edge rusher. I love Jared Verse and Latu giving them the choice of do you take the physical freak or do you take the highly skilled pass rusher? And part of that depends on what they already have in the room. Either one of them would be great picks, great value picks for this team and the actual situation that they're in. They just signed Laken Tomlinson, who I know that you know pretty well. I don't know if that's a long-term answer at guard. There's a couple offensive linemen on the table that I think could just add a little bit of competition and depth to the room. They used one on a wide receiver last year. I don't think they go in that direction. I do think it would be on the defensive side of the ball unless they go quarterback. So it comes back down to the edge rusher, and I don't think there's much else that is even in consideration. I like Byron Murphy on this team as well. So you could even just say as a compliment, as a pass rusher, that might be what they need to do if they don't go Penix. It's just like, hey, let's take our top available pass rusher. And that's where it could be Byron Murphy, Jared Verse, Latu.
Okay.
That's where I think they go if they don't go quarterback.
All right. So Jacksonville is next as we set to the second half of our draft. And by the way, the other thing is keep in mind because of the fact that Seattle's might be saying to themselves, we're going to take Penix or we want to take him, but maybe we shouldn't take him this early. Let's trade down. We don't have a second-round draft pick. Let's try to recoup some draft capital. We'll take Penix anyway, as long as they feel confident they can get him by going down a few spots. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
Yep.
Next up is Jacksonville.
So these guys have put themselves in a really good position in terms of just filling a few holes in free agency that they can go into this draft and be like, hey, whoever the best guy is, let's just grab him. Let's bring him into town.
Okay.
They added defensive line talent with Eric Armstead. They re-signed Josh Allen, their star pass rusher on the outside. They added 2 starters in the defensive backfield, the offensive line, wide receiver. Across the board, they just raised the floor of this entire team. And this is how, in my opinion, you try and do it. You go into draft weekend and say, hey, who's the standout grade on our board? And that's what I'm going to do here with this pick. Who's the best available player on either side of the ball? And it's going to come down to a pass rushing inside guy, which I think they need to complement the other bodies that they have. Davon Hamilton's a non-factor. Eric Armstead is starting to lose it a little bit. So I'm actually going to go with Jarzon Newton here, the pass rusher from Illinois. Inside. Couple tough calls there. Cooper DeJean's an option because of the versatility he can bring on the back end. Latu and Verse, it's surprising me they're still there, but this happens every year in the draft where you see guys that you just didn't think were going to fall end up falling. And
Bowers is,
so I think
and Bowers is still falling too for tight end. So
yeah,
guys are falling.
Evan Engram Evan Engram has found a home in Jacksonville. He's producing at a high level. He's got a good
they're not
relationship
going
with
after
Trevor
Bowers.
Lawrence.
Yeah.
So to me, it's Bowers is a really good player. Might even be the best player available, but their stocks at tight end, it would kind of be a waste of a resource while neglecting the pass rush, which Jarzon Newton will help out right away.
And again, when you have guys slipping like Brock Bowers and so forth, they're going to, like we just talked about Seattle, maybe wanting to trade down. Well, there you go. Maybe a team, Bowers is still available. Let me go get him with Seattle. Seattle moves down a couple spots. So, and maybe we'll, look, Cincinnati, you would think, well, there you go. They need a tight end, but that's just not part of their offense. They don't care. Now, who knows? Maybe this is the draft. Maybe they go, well, we've never had Brock Bowers sitting in front of us. So, because he's still there. Taking a look at what Cincinnati needs to do, they definitely need a slot upgrade. Of course, a lot's going to depend on Charlie Jones, but still. And again, we also think T. Higgins could get traded, so there's going to be a lot of talk there about that. They good move picking up the 2 wide receivers last year in the draft, but they can still add another wide receiver. They have they have Trent Brown now, which was a big addition to go along with Orlando Brown. So I think that helps him out. That doesn't mean that they won't add a right tackle at some point. So, and I think that they'll also add, I don't know, who would it be like if they were going to take a right tackle with their first pick, who is the most athletic right tackle available?
I'm Harris Mims, really. I mean, This is a spot where I think it makes a lot of sense because he kind of fits the mold of a Trent Brown, Orlando Brown, just like size, power, and the things you don't know about Mims yet. It's like you don't have to play him right away, which is what I think Cincinnati is pretty traditional in that regard. Like they don't mind sitting a rookie for an entire year or half a year. They didn't bring Trent Brown in to back up a rookie, so he'll be the starter week 1. And if he holds on to his job, you just have extra depth for a guy that needs a little bit more developing than your traditional right tackle that can be a first-round projection. So, J.C. Latham's a nice kind of like, secondary option. Fuaga, a nice, third option there. But if you're going for upside and, hey, perfect situation for the player, it's Amarius Mims.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, look, I think it would be. I think if Bowers was still on the board, Bengal fans and everybody would be targeting the Bowers to the Bengals. It's going to happen, but it just does make sense, just knowing this offense that's just they don't care about tight end as much, and it's more important that they get somebody on offensive line because they have to learn their lesson sooner or later. And if they go through another draft and don't spend a first-round draft pick on a tackle and bolster that room, they're going to be in trouble. So that's why I'm sticking with the Mims idea, especially because he could develop with Trent Brown starting this year. Okay, you're up next with the Rams.
I'm going to go fun here. This gets me excited that this could even happen, and fits the offense like a glove.
You're not going to say Brock Bowers, are you?
I am going to say Brock Bowers, tight end, because this just gives them there isn't a quarterback, there is not an offensive mind, maybe other than Shanahan, that I would want Bowers to get associated with just for the long term. Higbee is the kind of guy that, he's serviceable, hasn't been the same since his injury. Who knows how much longer he has? Even if he does stick around for another year or two, you're going to find usage for him. I mean, look what Puka Nacua did. I mean, it's funny, these guys are similar football players. You get them and Cooper Kupp. How do you defend that on 3rd and 6 where games are won and lost? And the creativity that Georgia had in using Brock Bowers since his freshman year, that carries over to what the Rams do. They're going to give this guys carries and jet sweeps and line them out wide, line them up in the backfield. I think he's an immediate superstar in that offense and gives them something to really stand on for the long-term future. So, a little bit of a curveball, but I like throwing at least a curveball or two into a mock draft like this.
Yeah, and I had when I was talking about them about a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that I think that Les Snead is the most underrated general manager in the game.
Yeah,
I could not believe when I did the homework that he has never been an executive of the year.
Oh wow! I didn't know that either.
I mean, Brandon Beane is his executive of the year twice, and you're not given.
this past season was one of the most impressive I've ever seen out of the Rams, and they didn't win it all, but like I remember going over their roster with you, and it was just like half their roster was rookies and day 3 picks, and they performed so well last year. I was really impressed, and that was all to me. That was all front office.
Yeah, I remember last year we talked about it as far as the because at this time last year it was a mess.
Yep.
And they made the playoffs with that roster.
Yep.
All right, so Pittsburgh is up, and look, the Steelers did an incredible job. We mentioned it on our live draft about the changes that just don't happen in one off season, and that is a quarterback. And it's just amazing that they've completely changed the room. And it was also amazing that they made the playoffs last year. But it shows you what a very well coached and a great organization they are. That's the reason that they made the playoffs last year. They kind of backdoored in a way because other teams had quarterback injuries and such. But still, it just shows you that's why if you're always around 500 like they are, you can backdoor a few times. As far as what they're going to need, I think defensively, I think they definitely have to do something as far as that nickel. That's just a wide open, definite 100% need. On offense, I don't know what they think overall about Dan Moore, but I've heard that they're satisfied with him. As much as he just doesn't seem to wow anybody, they seem to like him. Okay, but they definitely need a center, and this is where I don't know if Powers Johnson goes this high, but he could. I've heard a lot about him interviewing people. So I think offensively, I think that is the big one, but it's just too big of a issue though at nickel, and I think that is probably. I mean, if it's down to those two spots, like how high actually do you think Powers Johnson could go in the draft?
I would say mid-20s. I think this would be a little rich for him, but like I said, like they like Dan Moore. I don't like him, but I haven't liked him for a couple of years, and they want to keep put him out there. So they just used the first round pick on tackle Broderick Jones last year.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like they're not going to go tackle again. That's just not what the Steelers do. They kind of disperse their first round picks around, and but they still value the offensive line, and I do think there's a weak point inside on an offense that I think is going to be very run heavy, especially if Justin Fields gets his hands on that job in the next year or two. And he is by far the top offensive lineman in this draft.
Yep.
Week 1 starter, gives you guard center versatility. It's by no means would I call this a reach. Do I think he's if he doesn't go here, I'm going to consider him the next pick with Miami. So it's I wouldn't say it's too early at all.
No, he's going to go here, and that's the reason. The reason is because I think they could grab a nickel a little bit later on and still get a quality nickel.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and why not? Again, like I said, I've heard a lot about him in my interview process, and so he could definitely be the man that goes maybe a little bit early. All right, so center, Jackson Powers Johnson, Oregon. You're up next with Miami.
So Miami, I really can see them adding a wide receiver talent here because of what they do on offense and just leaning into that strength. And I'm not sure what the Jalen Waddle long-term future is there. But the name that's sticking out to me right now, there's 2 of them, and it's going to be a tough call. I like Cooper DeJean here. A nickel that could play safety, corner, outside even. But I also like Byron Murphy, the pass rushing D tackle on a team that just lost Christian Wilkins. And that guy's been, their top or second best pass rusher inside for 4 or 5 years now. And they didn't do much in free agency to replace him when it comes to the actual pass rushers. They've added some bodies there, but they also lost Raekwon Davis. So they're down 2 guys, and they added a bunch of guys that I think are reserves, second string, third string. So I'm going to go with my instinct on that and go with Byron Murphy, defensive tackle from Texas.
All right. And so what was your other option?
It was going to be Cooper DeJean, the nickel from Iowa, or wide receiver, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell.
Okay. Yeah, because we're at that point now in the draft where there's a lot of different options that you can go.
Yeah.
So we're getting there. All right. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles boy, you look at their roster and you're like, how in the world did they struggled so much last year after almost winning the Super Bowl? But hey, good teams have Super Bowl hangovers, and they had a hangover for sure. Offensively, I think a lot of it's depth. I mean, they could add all over the place, really depth-wise on offense. I think they're really their main guys are set. They could use maybe depth at running back, a tight end, offensive tackle, wide receiver. They could use a number 3 wide receiver because Devontae Parker, Paris Campbell. Okay, that's all right, but that could just be one-year deals. But I think that, to me, the way the board is going, it's really worked out perfectly for Philadelphia once again. So I'm going to ask you at this, knowing, because Fangio is the coordinator. They added Bryce Huff, but they do have Sweat, but he wants edge rushers, and edge rushers. And because of the way it's worked out, there are edge rushers available on our board. So who do you think would fit perfectly here with this defense with our board?
Man, I mean, Verse is the tools guy. Plays a little tight, a little bit of a raw guy. Doesn't have a lot of variety to his game, which works against college kids. I don't know if it always translates to NFL blockers.
Who would be more of a is there somebody that doesn't have to have their hand in the dirt?
I mean, they do everything. I mean, a guy that I think could play behind Josh Sweat early on. I mean, they have Nolan Smith waiting in the wings as well. So just considering the future and what these guys do, right? You bring in the slightly undersized Bryce Huff. You already have the slightly undersized Nolan Smith. You have Josh Sweat, who can play long, but I wouldn't call him a power defender. If there's one area I think this team is vulnerable, it's against the run. And that's not an area you want to be vulnerable in the NFC East, especially, and also during playoff football. You need to be able to stop and run the ball. As much as the game is changing, that's still a philosophy that I very much believe in.
So they need somebody on the edge.
Jared Verse, I think, is Jared Verse is a guy that I think can set the edge, defend the run, but also add as a pass rusher.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
The other position that I would look at would be corner. But I think right now, like I said, I'm just going to lean towards the fact that our board, because some of these guys like Verse could go much earlier. Latu is still on the board. So I just think it's time to add some more edge rushers as far as our board is concerned. But I could definitely see a corner here as well. Okay, Minnesota gets their second pick at 23.
So I'm looking at interior offensive line. I think there's 3 weak points there. Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, and Blake Brindell. Do I want to try and get J.C. Latham and convert him to guard? They're set at tackle, so I don't know if he has the value there. I feel the same way about Fuaga, who is a good tackle. I think he could be better at guard. Graham Barton is a name from Duke who played left tackle. He was going to play center at the Senior Bowl, but an injury kind of kept him out of the week. I have him as my second best guard, or interior lineman, I should say, in this class. Do they want to go down that path? Minnesota, their front office is just full of guys that come from that finance, economics background. I don't think using a first-round pick on an interior offensive lineman is in the cards for them.
They need a corner too, don't they?
So I go to positional value here, and I think it comes down to a corner or a pass rusher. They did lose Danielle Hunter to Houston, but they brought back in Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. So they have their starters there. Neither one of those guys are true number ones to me. So it comes down to a corner or pass rusher. Yeah. And it's a tough call.
I would go corner, but Latu is still on the board though, and he's starting to now drop into that spot where it's
great value.
Yeah, so that's a tough call. It's your call.
I think the medicals are going to scare off Minnesota from going Latu here. So I think it's going to err towards corner. And now I'm torn between the toolsy Nate Wiggins. Well, I shouldn't say toolsy. I should say the fast Nate Wiggins, because he's very light and he's not very long arms. So he doesn't play as big as his size would lead you to believe. Okay. Or just the safer Kool-Aid McKinstry. I feel safer with him on the field than Nate Wiggins, both run and pass, but I think he just knows the game better. He's got good, better feel. He was big-time talent in 2022. In 2023, they just didn't throw him in his direction. So everyone's like, oh, the production's down. He ran a 4.5, which is pretty slow for an outside corner. But I think the value of a corner stands out here, and I think they're going to err towards the guy that can do it right, and that's Kool-Aid McKinstry, corner from Alabama.
All right, there you go. That makes a lot of sense. And, either way, just as we always talk about, there's going to be some good value as you start getting a little bit later on in the draft. It's just the nature. All right. Yep. Dallas is next. And the Cowboys, taking a look at their primary needs, I think there are 3 to 4 of them myself. And I think right now I would be looking at linebacker. They did add Eric Kendricks, but that's not something that's going to be long term. And even though linebacker's a need, it's not one of those needs that you really worry about with this defense early. Offensive tackle is they lost Smith to the Jets. Tyler Smith now gets the opportunity to be the man, but right tackle is still a big issue. Steele's okay, but I think he's more serviceable as a swing. And then you have wide receiver and corner as well. Cooks is up there in age. Tolbert should be able to make a move, but that's still a question. And corner is also something that I'd look at. Jordan Lewis, he could be replaced at nickel. So I think you're looking at those spots. Let's see. So let's take a look at what's on the board at corner. You talked about Wiggins. Now again, because it's the slot, I think that you could also, we talked about with this Pittsburgh, I think you could wait maybe to go with the slot a little bit later on. As you know, I'm a big Sandersville guy. So yeah. I think you can get him in the second round, third round like that and love that all day long. I'll
tell you what, I think there's going to be a lot of demand for him. Every year, right, the week of the draft, I come up with my 5 guys that could come out of nowhere and be the first round pick that no one saw coming, and he's one of my guys. Cool. I don't think there's a shot he lasts around 3. I think he's a top 40 pick. So if you want him, it's going to be top 40 or you're not getting him.
Yeah, I'm gonna. But I just think the way that our board is. I think that, well, first of all, Brian Thomas is going to look really good. I think the Cowboys would love to get a guy like that. That's got Jerry Jones written all over him. But I think J.C. Latham has lasted long enough.
Yeah,
and I think it's time to add him to our draft.
That's a logical pick.
What do you think about him overall as a player?
I hated him in 2022, and I loved him in 2023. It's funny. I did a lot of summer scouting on him, and I said third round pick just based on his 2022 tape. Power guy, because I said his hands are as strong as anyone in this class. I would even say his hands are the best. So when he locks you up, you're not going anywhere.
Okay.
But I just saw some adjustment issues. Reactive athletic ability was not there, but he improved a lot, and that's what you want. I do fear the Alabama tackle sometimes. Maybe Evan Neal is still kind of sticking to me. But I know that this is a thought around the league too, that some of these really sophisticated professional caliber programs in college, they get these guys to top out in college. They don't get better because they're so sophisticated. Nutrition, training, coaching. I mean, we have NFL coaches on the Alabama staff every year. It's like a revolving door. It's like a transition year for guys in between jobs in the NFL, that once they get to the NFL, there's just not much left to get. So who J.C. Latham is right now is who he is going to be in 5 years. Is that good enough for NFL? That's the question that you're going to have with a guy from Alabama. I love him as a run blocker. I love him that if he has his feet underneath him and he's not overextending, if he gets his hands on, it's over. So as a right tackle, I feel good about that. And compared to what they need right now, I don't want to see Terrence Steele and Matt Willets go protecting my quarterback. So I like the pick. I think it's good value, and I think it's a good need as well.
All right. You are up next with the Packers, our final quarter of the draft. So we have to boogie here.
I am looking at 2 guys, Cooper DeJean, who gives them a really versatile defensive back. Even though I know Xavier McKinney came in this year, I still think they need a nickel.
Yep.
And Cooper DeJean kind of reminds me of Brian Branch.
Yeah.
He's really is a blend of a nickel, a corner, and a safety. He just tested. He had his pro day last week, did really well. So that kind of checked that box. So I'm going to go Cooper DeJean here to kind of replace what they thought they had in Darnell Savage, and gives them a really nice new addition to that defensive backfield with Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, I think he's awesome here because they need multiple DBs, and he fits perfectly into that kind of need situation. So yeah, that'd be great. Okay, Tampa Bay. I've got the Bucks next, and the Bucks, of course, had themselves an excellent year last year. Nobody was expecting. Defensively, wow, Latu's here. I think I'm going to take Latu. I'm not going to waste much time. I think they need an edge guy like Latu. I think they also have to look at some point they're going to add an inside linebacker on defense. They need a little depth at receiver, center. Again, if Powers Johnson's available, look there. But I'm not going to waste much time here, and I'm taking Latu. He's fallen far enough, and I think this is a really good spot for him.
I like it, and I think it fits the culture. I think it fits the coaching staff. You now have a front that has Latu being a first-round pick, a second-round pick, another first-round pick, another first-round pick, another first-round pick, and that's what that guy wants. That's what Todd Bowles wants. He just wants to get after the passer. He wants to be creative, but he wants to have that security net of, hey, if I have to rush 3 or 4, I can still get home. And Latu presents great value here, and if these guys pan out, Kalijah Kancey and Latu, in addition to Logan Hall, who I loved coming out, just hasn't really panned out yet, that is going to be a tough group to stop.
All right.
So we are on to
Arizona.
Arizona again. So we give him Marvin Harrison at number 4. Defensively is where I think they need some help. I think they're in the same boat as some other teams here that, hey, just get a pass rusher. Can be outside, inside. We'll make it work.
Yeah. What do we went with Marvin Harrison, right? First pick.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There isn't much left inside from a pass rush perspective. I think it's a little rich for Braden Fisk from Florida State, who I love, but I think he's just got day 2 written all over him. Just an older prospect, short arms. He plays light, but you get him in the right system, he'll do well. But I think round 1 is a little rich for him. Although that list of guys that I said, hey, surprise first rounders, he's on that list. Just so you know. That'll be coming out next week. So I moved on to the edge, and I have a guy that I've been back and forth on myself a few times, and I want to give this depth chart a look here. I mean, you have Bilal Nichols and Tonga and Jones and Collins. Zaven Collins to me is not someone I'm going to plan around. He's an inside linebacker converted to outside that I think is going to work out. Ojulari got his feet wet last year and he flashed, but again, I don't know if he's a true number 1. Gardeck, to me, I'm still not a believer in terms of being a true number 1 guy. I want to get an outside pass rusher on this team.
Yes, they need a pass rusher, yes.
It's a swing for the fence, but if he connects, I think he has Khalil Mack type ability, and it's Chop Robinson from Penn State. It's a huge risk. He was not very productive at Penn State, but he measured in better than I thought. I think he's just as explosive, if not more so, than Dallas Turner. And I do think he offers a little bit more from a power perspective because of his use of leverage. I love the mentality he plays with. He's a true leader. So it was going to be between him and Darius Robinson from Missouri. But he's a more inside-out guy, and I think they already added a couple guys in that mold. And they have some young guys that I think can play that mold inside out. So I'm going to go with the pass rusher here, Chop Robinson.
Yeah, the only other spot that I would look at right now would be corner.
Yeah.
So Wiggins, it would be Wiggins or like you just went with edge. So yeah, those would be the 2 spots I would go with.
I do think they want a little bit more physicality on the outside, and that's like the biggest. That's the biggest issue on his scouting report is that he's just not a very physical guy. He's very light, plays light.
Okay.
But it's definitely a possibility. I think Graham Barton is a conversation in that room too. I don't love Froholt playing center there. I like Graham Barton, and I think that kind of keeps Kyler Murray safe and healthy and on the field. So they could go in a couple different directions there. But after using that first pick on Marvin Harrison, I think they got to add to that defense to kind of keep it a little bit more balanced.
All right, next up is Buffalo, and I do believe, based on my conversation with our resident Buffalo insider, that the Bills are definitely going to trade. Trade up, trade down, they're going to trade. And they could definitely trade up. And if they do, it could be wide receiver. They could be looking to grab one of those top 3 guys. We could see the Bills making a huge move up to try to draft one of those 3 guys. But since we're not doing trades, and since there is still a really good player sitting there for him, I'm not going to worry about doing a whole lot of work here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take Brian Thomas Jr. For the Bills.
We gave him to the Colts.
Oh, we did?
But you have Adonai Mitchell is there. I think that's maybe we got confused there. That
no, that's okay.
Between those 2
he probably
guys.
Is. Let me just make sure he's on it. What that was the Colts?
Yep, 15.
15. Let's see. It was Brian Thomas. Cool. Okay. All right. So that means that you've got Mitchell, which again, yes, I think we both agree that Mitchell is going to get drafted in the first round.
Yep.
He's just a hot guy. And so, again, I don't think there's much of a big difference, actually, to tell you the truth. So
no, there's not. I mean, if you told me right now, draft night, it's going to be reversed. Mitchell goes 15 and Thomas goes 28, I believe you. I want to go on record that I think I put together my final mock draft with write-ups coming up. Adonai Mitchell, I think, is going to go higher than we all think. I just have a feeling. I don't have any reason other than the fact that he's a freak, great ball skills, rare ball skills, produce it. But I agree. I think he's going to go higher than what everyone else thinks. But we'll see. That's the fun of the draft, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're right. I think there's he's a hot name. All right, yep. Detroit's next.
Detroit. So what does this team do a lot of that we often look down on, we as in the public, the media, and then
they go for it on 4th down.
They go after value at positions that the public thinks should not be drafted in round 1. Jack Campbell last year, Jahmyr Gibbs last year. They don't get to the NFC Championship without those guys. And one of the top players available on my board right now is Graham Barton, the guard/center from Duke. Coming off a foot injury, he's fully healthy. He'll be good to go. My problem is they signed Kevin Zeitler in free agency to replace the kid Jonah Jackson, who signed with Los Angeles.
Yeah, that was an important signing. Yeah.
Graham Glasgow, Frank Ragnow, are those guys really the long-term answers inside? This team is forward-thinking. They're not only thinking about 2024, they're thinking about 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, Ragnow was talking about there's some health issues there to keep an eye on. So
that's option 1.
But they also need a corner, don't they?
They need a corner. They could even use a little bit more defensive line help. The signing of DJ Reader is going to kind of knock that need down a little bit. I'm looking at Darius Robinson as a guy that I think is going to be hard for Dan Campbell to pass on. But look at the depth chart. I don't know where they put him. I mean, they're already 4 deep at the end. They might even be 5 deep at the end.
Oh, okay.
So I think I'm going to pass on pass rusher. Corner, you got. Do I like a corner enough here to go Nate Wiggins? I don't think Nate Wiggins fits in with what they like to do from a physicality perspective.
Okay.
This is a team where I could see Mike Sammers still being that surprise first round pick. Stays in that in Michigan and sticks with Detroit. They have the nickel and Brian Branch. They signed Amick Robinson.
Has anybody fallen in our draft, by the way?
Right. I'm going to go with my gut and just say, hey, this is going to be another decision that everyone criticizes because of positional value. I'm going to go with Graham Barton, the interior. I would even say I'm just going to call him an offensive lineman because he can project to 5 spots. Graham Barton, offensive lineman from Duke.
Yeah, especially because, again, as we said, there's talk about the long-term health at center. And then Glasgow is not getting any younger. Neither is Zeitler. So they know how important the offensive line is. And by adding another talented, versatile player, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that is Detroit. Now we go with Baltimore and the Baltimore Ravens. They are definitely looking at wide receiver as a top need. It's interesting how last year it looked like, well, we've got all the receivers now, Lamar Jackson, and now one offseason later, they need receivers again. So they definitely need receivers. They also need offensive line help because at guard, Yeah, that's you don't want to have Voorhees and nothing else. So and I'm not even sure how comfortable they are with Falele as a right tackle. That's still an iffy proposition. So I think because of the way that our board is fallen, I know there are a couple of wide receivers out there that could go here, like McConkey and Worthy, because of Worthy's speed. I would probably say Worthy would be a player that they'd love to have on the roster with his speed, and Lamar Jackson and so forth. And then as far as offensive line, on our board, we still have the kid from Oregon State is still available. He's the top guy, I think, that we still have available at offensive line. So yep. I want to make sure that so you got Worthy, and then also they could use a little bit more on the edge because Ajabo hasn't done much yet. Away has been disappointing. Robinson is available on the edge right now. He's the top edge guy, I believe, available. So I think that's what we're down to. We're down to, let me just make sure I've got these updated. So we're down to Robinson on the edge, Fuaga at tackle, or Worthy. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and say let's go with Worthy.
Okay, that's fun. That's a fun pick.
Let's put that blazing speed guy at wide receiver because I'm not even sure how long Bateman's going to be there.
Right. I mean, his physical build, style of play, why you're drafting him, is pretty similar to a pick they made previously, and that was Marquise Brown out of Oklahoma. And it worked out early on. The question of drafting Worthy is does this team get a little insecure about the fact that 2 consecutive first round picks on guys that are on the smaller side? Maybe that doesn't matter as much in this offense. I mean, I'm always a speed oversized guy at receiver now because you're just not allowed to touch these guys. So how physical they are doesn't matter as much as it used to. And speed kills. We're watching Miami do it with guys that are both really small, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. And I think that is what brings the best out in Lamar Jackson is speed on the outside because it just stretches the entire defense. Yep. And you give a guy like Lamar with his running ability more space to work with because you're stretching the defense. That's where you see the best Lamar. And now you have Derrick Henry in the mix to, hey, when teams start to favor, you can just hand the ball to him and go let him run over defensive backs that are trying to keep up with Worthy and Flowers. So I like the move. I do think they need a receiver. I think that's got to be priority A or B for this team.
Yeah, and again, McConkey, I don't think they would need McConkey as much as Worthy because Flowers can kind of fill that role that McConkey's doing. And, Aguilar is just a Band-Aid, and Bateman, like I said, we have no idea how much longer he's going to be here. Okay, 2 more teams to go, right? And that is next with San Francisco.
Yep. If I'm San Francisco, I'm looking at 2 guys here. It's already narrowed down to 2 guys, and they both play with their hands in the dirt. One of them is a defensive end / defensive tackle, and Darius Robinson, who got invited to the draft, by the way. And that usually tells me this guy's going to be a first-round pick. It's not always like that. Brian Branch was invited last year, and he had to wait, I think, 12 picks in the second round to go. Will Levis went in the second round. So the fact that he got invited always is telling to me that there's first-round chatter about him. And this team just lost Eric Armstead, who's like that outside-inside threat that they developed into this big physical dude that doesn't always fill up the stat sheet. But he's an effective player, and that's what Darius Robinson is to me. I don't think he's going to be a 10-sack-a-year guy, but I think he's going to be an important piece to a good defense. The other option is, I'm nervous for them at right tackle with Colton McKivitz being there. And, I mean, you got Talise Fuaga wrapped up in front of you, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It gives them depth, which they're going to need. If you're a contending team in the NFL, in my opinion, you need 7 guys on your offensive line that can start any Sunday. And this puts Fuaga at the starting right tackle pretty early in his career, but it also gives you Brandon Parker and Colton McKivitz as really high-quality depth. Yeah. So I'm going to go with Talise Fuaga, tackle from Oregon State. And
Fuaga could be their apparent at left tackle at some point.
It could be.
Yeah. Yep. So because, I mean, it's only a matter of time. I mean, Trent Williams ain't going to be around forever. So... But, yeah, I don't even know if he'd still be available, to tell you the truth. But, again, players are going to slip. So right now it has slipped where we have Fuaga. Because did you think he'll be available this late, Fuaga?
Yeah. Did I think he'd be this late?
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, I'm not a huge mock draft guy, but I've done this right here and the one with our lads. And I think the one with our lads, he didn't go in the first round, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to tell you this right now. I just got done talking with USA Today about this. This is the best tackle group I've ever graded.
Depth-wise.
Depth and even not at the, like I've graded better tackles than Fashanu and Alt, but the fact that there's two guys that I gave Pro Bowl grades to, and then also this kind of depth, you're gonna see a guy or two fall to round two. It's just by numbers alone.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna be that, or some of these receivers are gonna drop. And to me, I don't think the receivers are gonna drop. I think those guys are just too appetizing for the decision makers in the NFL to really change a game. You know, that's what you go after, the game breakers. So, you know, am I surprised? I'm not surprised that an offensive lineman dropped this far. Absolutely not.
All right. And then
it's going to happen.
We're going to wrap it up with the Chiefs, like they need anything else. So, taking a look at their main needs, they need offensive line help. I think Morris, he's going to be their left tackle, but they don't have anything right now. If you take a look at their depth chart, I'm going to pop it up on the screen quickly here so you can see it. There's not a lot going on with depth on the offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, I think Guyton might be the top guy left on the board. He's an Oklahoma kid, so I think they've gone down that road before, and it's worked out. They also need wide receiver help because, yes, they need to move from Marquise Brown and Rashee Rice they have there, but Sky Moore has been a little bit disappointing, and they don't really have a whole lot of exciting players. So wide receivers definitely there, and I think they also could use, maybe this is where the first running back comes off the board. Obviously, Pacheco's the number one guy, no question. But the guy he's so physical, he can't stay healthy, and there's nothing behind him. So there's just questions behind him. You got Edwards-Helaire, you got Pirine, Prince had a good preseason, but nothing else. So maybe this is where the first running back comes off the board. But I'm going to go ahead and just say the best player that's just available on my board at this point, and I'm going to go ahead and take McConkey for Kansas City. I think he would be a really good fit because he's last year they had so many issues with the receivers because they were very inconsistent, but McConkey's like one of those guys. He's coming in, he's going to be ready to go from week one. So
I think McConkey, if he's paired with a high-level passer and offensive play caller, the guy's going to catch 100 passes a year. Like, no question.
Yeah, right.
And I don't like the Chiefs. I hope he goes to Kansas City because it'll just be fun to watch. It really is the perfect match. I think Ricky Pearsall can be in that conversation as well. He brings a little bit more size to the table, but I put measurables of McConkey next to my database of guys that from previous. He, other than length, is really close to Garrett Wilson. That 4.39 that he ran at the combine was like whoa, and he runs a 4.39 and plays even faster because of how well developed and polished of a route runner he is, and how smart and how much he can feel the leverage of the defense. You put a smart, fast, quick, twitchy guy like that with one of the best, in my opinion, the best offensive play caller in football, with a quarterback that is just 5 steps ahead mentally and physically of whatever is going around him. I mean, that to me, Ladd McConkey is not a first-round caliber guy in some offenses. It just won't work out, but you put him in this offense, he could be a Cooper Kupp production caliber guy.
Who's your top running back if they were going to be looking for a running back? Do you have a definite... He's the guy for sure.
Trey Benson's been my RB1 since last July, and I can't get away from it. I mean, if anything, he didn't have the season I wanted him to have, and this is where you have to kind of control your bias in this whole process, because I can't even tell you, Greg, how long of a process this is. I've already started my 2025 reports and note-taking and data collection, and Benson I was hoping for him to be the dude on Florida State, but they split carries. They wanted to keep him fresh. That's just the way they did it. And then things start to fall apart towards the end of the year. But then he did hit metrics that I was surprised to hit. He ran over 21.5 miles an hour according to GPS data, the second most of every running back in the country last year. Think about that.
Wow.
At 6'1", 215, 218. I mean, this kid, actually, the more I watched him, is kind of like a Breece Hall type, where he might take the league by storm.
Yeah, he's got home run potential, yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't tear his ACL like Breece did, and I still believe in Breece Hall in year 2. I always believe in guys year 2 coming off an ACL. So I'm curious to see what he does next year. I think he could be one of the top 5 backs production-wise in the NFL. Part of that is contingent on Aaron Rodgers staying healthy and on the field. But I see that in Trey Benson. Brooks is coming off his own ACL injury. Corum, Lloyd, Davis, Irving, like those guys are all – it's funny, my grades, Blake Corum through Jalen Wright, 3 through 8, they all finished with the same numerical grade. So basically,
so it could be anywhere from –
anywhere.
Okay. Because I was going to say, Jalen Wright, you have him down at 8, and I know Arlaz has him as number 2.
That's right. That's why I'm not a huge rankings guy, because, they have the same number. It's just based on what would I want if I was starting a team. Like, I love Corum I think he's going to be one of the best short yardage backs in the NFL, but I don't know if I want him as like my every down guy. Just didn't do a lot after contact at Michigan.
Yeah.
But Jalen Wright, if you want a home run hitter, if you want a big play, explosive play guy, that's Jalen Wright all day. So, that's the funny thing about ranks. Like, sometimes it's better to get grades out on guys so you can say, oh, they all have the same grade. I don't actually think this guy's 5 players better than the other. But, it's a fun process, and I'm just it's really fun looking back on how much goes into it, dating back to over 12 months ago, and to see that this is where it comes out, and we're just 10 days away.
Yeah, it looks like Braylon Trice and Darius Robinson are a couple of guys that we didn't go with. Your top defensive tackle from Clemson. But again, that's your ranking. But no linebacker was taken, and no running back was taken. And Nate Wiggins is also still on the board. And no safety, unless you consider Cooper Jazeen a safety. And you do have him as a safety. So.
Yep.
All right, Dave. That was fun.
That was awesome, man. That was a lot, just like old days, right?
Yeah, quick 2 hours. All right, so again, hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm sure you have your own questions, comments, issues. Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, because we're going to be back with more videos, many more, between now and the draft, and then even after the draft. We're just not going to stop with the videos.
Yep.
So that's why you want to subscribe immediately. Don't forget to like and share as well. For Dave Syvertsen, I'm Greg DePalma. Make sure to order the draft guide. Again, go to the arleds.com website. Here it is. I don't know what you're doing without a draft guide at this point, but make sure you get one. And we'll see everybody next time here on the Arlads Football Network. And also, you can check out these videos over at Prime Sports Network. All right. Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.